it's Jasper, and today we're going to be reading chapter 11 of The Princess and the Goblin. Pairing with today's story, I'm going to be having a tall iced coffee. Now normally I drink my coffee black, but because I have been sick, I just adding a little bit of almond milk to my coffee for some reason makes it just a little easier to sneak caffeine in without alerting my body. I don't know why. It's my secret. As always, pour yourself something yummy to drink. Relax, enjoy, and cheers. Chapter 11, The Old Lady's Bedroom. Nothing more happened worth telling for some time. The autumn came and went by. There were no more flowers in the garden. The winds blew strong and howled along the rocks. The rain fell and drenched the few yellow and red leaves that could not get off the bare branches. Again and again there would be a glorious morning, followed by a pouring afternoon, and sometimes for weeks altogether there would be rain, nothing but rain all day. And then the most lovely cloudless night, with the sky all out in full-blown stars, not one missing. But the princess could not see much of them, for she went to bed early. The winter drew on, and she found things growing dreary. When it was too stormy to go out, and she got tired of her toys, Ludi would take her about the house. Sometimes to the housekeeper's room, where the housekeeper, who was a good, kind old woman, made much of her. Sometimes to the servants' hall or the kitchen, where she was not princess merely, but absolute queen, and ran a great risk of being spoiled. Sometimes she would run off herself to the room where the men-at-arms, whom the king had left, sat, and they showed her their arms and accoutrements, and did what they could to amuse her. Still, at times she found it very dreary, and often wished that her huge great-grandmother had not been a dream. One morning, the nurse left her with the housekeeper for a while. To amuse her, she churned out the contents of an old cabinet upon the table. The little princess found her treasures, queer, ancient ornaments, and many things, the uses of which she could not imagine, far more interesting than her own toys, and sat playing with them for 2 hours or more. But at length, in handling a curious old-fashioned brooch, she ran the pin into her thumb, and gave a little scream with the sharpness of the pain. But would have thought little more of it had not the pain increased and her thumb began to swell. This alarmed the housekeeper greatly. The nurse was fetched, the doctor was sent for, her hand was poulticed, and long before her usual time she was put to bed. The pain still continued, and although she fell asleep and dreamed a good many dreams, there was the pain always in every dream. At last, it woke her up. The moon was shining brightly into the room. The poultice had fallen off her hand and it was burning hot. She fancied if she could hold it into the moonlight that it would cool it. So she got out of bed without waking the nurse, who lay at the other end of the room, and went to the window. When she looked out, she saw one of the men-at-arms, walking in the garden with the moonlight glancing on his armor. She was just going to tap on the window and call him, for she wanted to tell him all about it, when she bethought herself that it might wake Ludi, and she would put her into bed again. So she resolved to go to the window of another room and call him from there. It was so much nicer to have somebody to talk to than lie awake in bed with the burning pain in her hand. She opened the door very gently and went through the nursery, which did not look into the garden, to go to the other window. But when she came to the foot of an old staircase, there was the moon shining down from some window high up and making these worm-eaten oaks look very strange and delicate and lovely. In a moment she was putting her little feet one after the other in the silvery path of the stair, looking behind as she went, to see the shadow they made in the middle of the silver. Some little girls might have been afraid to find themselves thus alone in the middle of the night, but Irene was a princess. As she went slowly up the stairs, not quite sure that she was not dreaming, suddenly a great longing woke in her heart to try once more whether she could find the old lady with the silvery hair. If she is a dream, she said to herself, then I am likelier to find her if I am dreaming. So up she went, stair after stair, until she came to many rooms, all just as she'd seen them before. Through passage after passage, she softly sped, comforting herself that if she should lose her way, it wouldn't matter much, because when she woke, she would find herself in her own bed, with Ludi not far off. But, as if she had known every step of the way, she walked straight to the door at the foot of the narrow stair that led to the tower. What if I should really find my beautiful old grandmother up there, she said to herself as she crept up the steep steps. When she reached the top step, she looked a moment, listening in the dark, and there was no moon there. Yes, it was. The hum of the spinning wheel. What a diligent grandmother to work both day and night. She tapped gently at the door. "Come in, Irene," said the sweet voice. The princess opened the door and entered. There was the moonlight streaming in at the window, and in the middle of the moonlight sat the old lady in her black dress with the white lace and her silvery hair mingling with the moonlight, so that you could not have distinguished one from the other. "Come in, Irene," she said again. "Can you tell me what I am spinning?" She speaks, thought Irene, just as if she had seen me 5 minutes ago, or yesterday at the furthest. "No," she answered, "I don't know what you're spinning. Please, I thought you were a dream. Why couldn't I find you before, great-great-grandmother?" "That you are hardly old enough to understand. But you would have found me sooner if you hadn't come to think I was a dream. I will give you one reason, though, why you couldn't find me. I didn't want you to find me." "Why, please?" "Because I did not want Ludi to know I was here." "But you told me to tell Ludi." "Yes, but I knew Ludi would not believe you. If she were to see me spinning here, she wouldn't believe me either." "Why?" "Because she couldn't. She would rub her eyes and go away and say she felt queer and forget half of it and more, and then say it had all been a dream." "Just like me," said Irene, feeling very much ashamed of herself. "Yes, a good deal like you, but not just like you, for you've come again. And Ludi wouldn't have come again. She would have said, no, no. She had had enough of such nonsense." "Is it naughty of Ludi, then?" "It would be naughty of you. I've never done anything for Ludi." "And you did wash my face and hands for me," said Irene, beginning to cry. The old lady smiled a sweet smile and said, "I'm not vexed with you, my child, nor with Ludi either. But I don't want you to say anything more to Ludi about me. If she should ask you, you must just be silent. But I do not think she will ask you." All the time they talked, the old lady kept on spinning. "You haven't told me yet what it is I'm spinning," she said. "Well, because I don't know. It's very pretty stuff." It was indeed very pretty. There was a good bunch of it on a distaff attached to the spinning wheel, and in the moonlight it shone like, well, what should I say it was like? It was not white enough for silver. Yes, it was like silver, but shone gray rather than white, and glittered only a little. And the thread the old lady drew out from it was so fine that Irene could hardly see it. "I'm spinning this for you, my child." "For me? What am I to do with it, please?" "I'll tell you by and by, but first I will tell you what it is. It is spider's webs, of a particular kind. My pigeons bring it for me from over the sea. There's only one forest where the spiders live who make this particular kind, the finest and strongest of any. I have nearly finished my present job. What is on the rack now will be quite sufficient. I have a week's worth there yet, though," she added, looking at the bunch. "Do you work all day and night, too, great-great-great-great-grandmother?" said the princess, thinking it to be very polite with so many greats. "I'm not quite so great as all of that," she answered, smiling almost merrily. "If you call me grandmother, that will do." "No, I don't work every night. Only moonlit nights, and then no longer than the moon shines upon my wheel. I shan't work much longer tonight." "And what will you do next, grandmother?" "Go to bed. Would you like to see my bedroom?" "Yes, that I should." "Then I think I won't work any longer tonight. I shall be in good time." The old lady rose and left her wheel standing, just as it was. You see, there was no good in putting it away, for where there was any furniture, There was no danger of being untidy. Then she took Irene by the hand, but it was her bad hand, and Irene gave a little cry of pain. "My child," said her grandmother, "what is the matter?" Irene held her hand in the moonlight, that the old lady might see it, and told her all about it, at which she looked grave. But she only said, "Give me your other hand," and having led her up the dark landing, opened the door on the opposite side of it. What was Irene's surprise to see the loveliest room she had ever seen in her life. It was large and lofty and dome-shaped. From the center hung a lamp as round as a ball, shining as if it was the brightest moonlight, which made everything visible in the room, though not so clearly that the princess could tell what many of the things were. A large oval bed stood in the middle, with a coverlid of rose color and velvet curtains all around it, of a lovely pale blue. The walls were also blue, spangled all over with what looked like stars of silver. The old lady left her and was going to look at a strange cabinet, opened it, and took out a curious silver casket. Then she sat down on a low chair, and calling Irene, made her kneel before her while she looked at her hand. Having examined it, she opened the casket and took from it a little ointment. The sweetest odor filled the room, like that of roses and lilies. As she rubbed the ointment gently all over the hot, swollen hand, her touch was so pleasant and cool that it seemed to drive away the pain and heat wherever it came. "Oh, grandmother, it is so nice," said Irene. "Thank you, thank you." Then the old lady went to the chest of drawers and took out a large handkerchief of gossamer-like cambric, which she tied around her hand. "I don't think that I can let you go away tonight," she said. "Do you think you would like to sleep with me?" "Oh, yes, yes, dear grandmother," said Irene, and would have clapped her hands, forgetting that she could not. "You won't be afraid, then, to go to bed with such an old woman?" "No, you are so beautiful, grandmother. But I am very old. And I suppose I am very young. You won't mind sleeping with such a very young woman, grandmother?" "You are a very sweet little princess," said the old lady, and drew her toward her and kissed her on the forehead and the cheek and the mouth. Then she got a large silver basin, and having poured some water into it, made Irene sit on the chair and washed her feet. This done, she was ready for bed. And oh, what a delicious bed it was, in which her grandmother laid her. She could hardly have told her she was lying upon anything. She felt nothing but softness. The old lady having undressed herself and lay down beside her. "Why don't you put out your moon?" asked the princess. "Oh, that never goes out, night or day," she answered. "In the darkest night, if any of my pigeons are out on a message, they always see my moon and know where to fly." "But if somebody besides the pigeons were to see it, somebody about the house, I mean, they would come to look and find you." "The better for them, then," said the old lady. "But it does not happen above 5 times in 100 years that anyone does see it. The greater part of those who do take it for a meteor, wink their eyes and forget it again. Besides, nobody could find the room except I pleased. Besides, again, I will tell you a secret. If that light were to go out, you would fancy yourself laying in a bare garret on a heap of old straw, and you would not see the pleasant things around you all this time." "I hope it will never go out," said the princess. "I hope not, but it is time we both went to sleep. Shall I take you in my arms?" The little princess nestled close up to the old lady, who took her in both her arms and held her close to her bosom. "Oh dear, this is so nice," said the princess. "I don't know anything in the whole world could be so comfortable. I should like to lie here forever." "You may, if you will," said the old lady, "but I must put you to one trial. Not a very hard one, I hope. This night, this week, you must come back to me. If you don't, I do not know when you may find me again, and you will soon want me very much. Oh, please, don't let me forget. You shall not forget. The only question is whether you will believe I am anywhere, whether you will believe I am anything but a dream. You may be sure I will do all I can to help you to come, but it will rest with yourself after all. On the night of next Friday, you must come to me. Mind now." "I will try," said the princess. "Then good night," said the old lady, and kissed the forehead which lay in her bosom. In a moment more, the little princess was dreaming in the midst of her lovely dreams, of summer seas and moonlight and mossy springs, great murmuring trees and beds of wild flowers, with such odors as she had never smelled before. But after all, no dream could be more lovely than that she had left behind when she fell asleep. In the morning, she found herself in her own bed. There was no handkerchief or anything else on her hand, only a sweet odor lingering about it. The swelling had all gone down, the prick of the brooch was vanished. In fact, her hand was perfectly well. Now this was a rather long chapter, so I'd like to talk about two things really quick that I find of interest in this chapter. The first thing is we get hints that Princess Irene is going to be set up for an adventure. We see this most directly in the way her grandmother tells her she has something difficult to ask of her next time she comes to visit her. We also get hints of this as her grandmother talks about the importance of Princess Irene coming back and believing that her great-great-grandmother is truly there. And finally, on this, we not only see hints that Princess Irene will be asked to do something quite adventurous, but also that she may be fairly well equipped for this. Something which is illustrated in the line, which says something along the lines of, most girls would have been afraid to find themselves alone, but not Irene, because Irene was a princess. The second thing I'd like to talk about really quick is the character of Irene's great-great-grandmother. In the chapters leading up to this one, we've seen there's an air of mystery around her, in the way that, one, Princess Irene kind of almost magically finds her grandmother, and when she tries to find her a second time, is unable to. We see this also when her father hears that the great-great-grandmother is present in the castle, and he mentions to Irene that he can't simply go to see her, but must be invited. And so, at the beginning of this chapter, where we see this magical moonlit night, a sky full of stars, it's this like special night that Princess Irene is able to almost like sleepwalk to her great-grandmother's. There's something magical and mysterious about the journey one needs to take to visit Irene's great-great-grandmother. The other thing that's very interesting we see developed is the way in which her great-grandmother talks to her, explaining to her that it will be difficult for Irene to not imagine the next day that her visit with the grandmother is a dream, and that in fact most people who see her great-great-grandmother see her and then rub their eyes and think, it was a dream. But there's something about Irene in particular, that she has an ability to believe what others cannot. The character of the great-grandmother is one of my favorites in the story, and one certainly, as we get further and further, we'll talk more and more about. Now, before I say bye, I have a very quick announcement. I will be changing my uploading schedule from 2 videos a week to 1 video a week. For the full spiel and reasoning on this, check out my newest video, the one that I'm making after this, which will be called Writing/Life Updates, for the whole reason why I am making this change. Long story short is I love making these videos, but unfortunately I have some things that are happening that are just going to be taking away some time. So what that means for this series is the installments of my reading of The Princess and the Goblin will now be every other week. As always, guys, I hope whatever you've been drinking has been good, that the conversation and story have been a fair match. Cheers and cheers.